but we need more education. We will be touching base on the subject. It's now dominating the discussion platforms, and it's about the Auditor General, who has now gone on leave, and so his deputy is in acting capacity. And just like we all do when we're on leave, sometimes you want to pop in, either because you're stressed at home or wherever you're relaxing, or you miss work, you pop in and you want to test whether the office door is working. He did just on Tuesday, just didn't work. Apparently, those he left behind, his own office, had changed the locks.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
Obviously that it was flat like this.
Yeah, so this,
and they've changed it to this one. So that is fine.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
Obviously that it was flat like this.
Yeah, so this,
and they've changed it to this one. So that is fine.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
Obviously that it was flat like this.
Yeah, so this,
and they've changed it to this one. So that is fine.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
Obviously that it was flat like this.
Yeah, so this,
and they've changed it to this one. So that is fine.
Well, so that's what transpired. It dominated discussions on Joy FM and also JoyNews right here. Evans Mensah had an interaction with Kuja Asante of CDD, and just 12 hours on the new development that we also want to apprise you of. We'll do that, and it's all because of these related matters, talking about the independence of the Auditor General and this very action, how that could set some bad precedents for the future, or will it not? It's a big question that we all need to grab a cheese and wait as we have this discussion. But before we do that, look, let's make sure that we're in the right stead. So Mama Vioso Abuaje also will be talking about the mental state and mental capacity, or whether we have contravened juvenile laws in our country in prosecuting offenders. And we know we have an act, we also have a Children's Act, etc. But beside that, there's a bigger conversation, and this is related to the Ajusa Senior High Technical School issue, where an assistant headmaster decided to lock a group of students he suspected to have stolen. And subsequently, one attempted suicide. And after they were locked and now released, etc., one has also agreed that he was a culprit in that suspicious case subsequently. But it speaks to a broader issue about how you manage young people, juveniles, the mental state, etc. We'll talk about it. But let's get on to the streams and speak to Inusah Hussaini. Inusah Hussaini is a former minister, but also current minister, member of parliament for Tamale Central, and speaks volumes on issues. Mama Yoso Waje's bona fide friend. Me too, me too. Me too movement. And Mama, we do have Mr. Inusah Hussaini.
We do. Mr. Hussaini, we see you there. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and how are you?
We're all good.
Great. So we've called you on the back of this Domelevo issue where he's on leave, on a compulsory leave. We know the days were extended from initial days that we all thought, well, that was what had accrued. Now he's on a 167 leave days. But he passed through his office yesterday only to discover that the locks had been changed. You've been following the story as well. What's unusual about what is happening to the Auditor General?
Well, thank you so very much, Mama V and Roland. There are many things unusual with the way the Auditor General is being treated. The first obvious thing is that the Auditor General, obviously being a public officer, is entitled to leave. But where the Auditor General leave, they leave. And so for a president of a country to direct an Auditor General to take an accumulated leave is wrong. It's wrong by practice, convention, and by the law. Two, the Constitution specifically says that the Auditor General nobody shall interfere into the performance or functions of the Auditor General during the performance of those functions. But here we have a case where it's wrong. Thirdly, the Auditor General has not been fired. He's been asked to go and leave. His office is still in his office. He can be an acting Auditor General. But that being so, where an acting Auditor General is appointed, that Auditor General acts in his stead until he returns to work. So how come, or where lies the changing of the locks of the office of the Auditor General? Why should that be changed? Because that is still his office. That is still his office. And so the Auditor General has not, when he was asked to go on leave, obeyed the president, went on leave, but challenged the decision. I have not read or come across an instance where the Auditor General has returned to office and thereby compelling his removal, forceful removal from office. So for anybody to go change the locks of the Auditor General willfully is capricious and very ill-advised.
What's your interpretation of that action?
Again?
I'm asking for your interpretation of that action. I mean, it's almost like you're not needed here.
The interpretation is very clear. The Auditor General is not wanted. Is not wanted in the office. Whoever has directed the persons to lock the Auditor General out of his office is sending a clear message to the Auditor General that he is not wanted. That is the clearest interpretation that you can put on it. Because there is no rule or requirement that requires or stipulates that when the person goes on leave, his office has to be barricaded. There is no rule like that. And for anybody to do that is to act willfully, intentionally, removing the Auditor General from office. And this is very capricious.
So,
it's whimsical.
Mr. Fuseni, what can we do about it, knowing that the creation of that office,
say the list.
The creation of that office is one that has been created by the Constitution. You and I have a responsibility, the people of Ghana. You are a member of Parliament. You sit on the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. What can we do in the face of this? There are other issues in courts with regards to the Auditor General, but particularly with this issue of he goes back to his office whilst he's on leave and realizes that the locks are changed. What can we do to protect that office?
The first thing that we can do to protect that office is what we are doing. Talking about the wanton disregard for law and procedure. That's the first thing we are doing. And that is commendable. Because if we refuse to speak against wrongs perpetuated against public bodies, no matter how the public officer is viewed in the eyes of government, then government will become more dictatorial, more tyrannical, and more arbitrary. And when the government becomes dictatorial and tyrannical, it impacts negatively on our attempt to install for ourselves democratic governments to be ruled in accordance with the constitution and the laws of the country. And that is why we have to speak against it. It's a very, very sorry development. It's unfortunate that the president is presiding over a country where this level of lawlessness can be perpetuated against public officers. It's very unfortunate.
I wonder though.
Two, the least opportunity I have in Parliament, I will make a statement. But I know that a statement of that nature will have to be, first of all, admitted by the Speaker. If the Speaker fails, refuses, or neglects to accept such a statement, we will have to speak to the media. We will also have to build a body of consensus by good people, good thinking people of this country to rise against the actions of the executive in locking up the office of the Auditor General.
Mr. Hussein,
thirdly,
yes.
Thirdly, we have to support him and support the action in court to ensure that the proper thing is done.
Mr. Hussein, Mr. Husseini, hang in there for me. I've got one more question for you, but let me bring our court correspondent, Joseph Akable, who will give us an update in terms of the cases in courts in relation to the Auditor General. Joseph Akable, thanks for joining us. Bring us up to speed. How many cases are in court?
And so there are two major ones. The first one relates to this issue of accumulated leave, which Mr. Husseini is speaking about. In fact, today the Attorney General's office has filed some documents and will be making oral arguments to that effect. The first issue has to do with a request for injunction filed by Professor Stephen Asari. Is asking that the court restrains Mr. Ekwuamo-Esiedu, who was appointed by the president, per that letter that came from the presidency, as the acting Auditor General. They are asking that he is restrained from acting as the acting Auditor General. They also asking that the leave, Mr. Domelevo is restrained also from proceeding on that leave that he has been asked to proceed on. And so that is the injunction issue that the court would have to hear. The AG's office, the documents that we have seen, are opposed to the injunction and will be arguing that granting of the injunction will affect the work of the office. They expected to argue per the documents we have cited that there have been occasions where the Auditor General is not around, that the deputy has acted in his stead and has actually appeared before various committees in Parliament, sometimes the Public Accounts Committee, to perform those functions. And so Deputy AG Godfrey Adebowale will be telling the court that granting such an injunction will mean that the office will not be able to function until this particular matter is resolved. The second request per the documents that have been filed by the AG's office has to do with asking the court to strike out the Auditor General and Johnson Ekwuamo-Esiedu, who is the acting Auditor General, as defendants in this particular case. Now, that argument that will be made, if it is granted by the court, will mean that the Attorney General, who is defending the action of the presidency in this particular matter, will now be defending the Auditor General, who is a victim of the leave issue, and the Deputy Auditor General, who has been asked to act as the acting Auditor General, who is the beneficiary of this particular action. It means that he will be the only one to be defending this particular matter against Professor Asari's lawyers. And so it's an issue that Professor Asari's lawyers intend to oppose and urge the court to allow those two others to remain defendants in this particular case. And so that is it in terms of one of the cases. There's another case that was filed by a private legal practitioner, Isaac Obafor Asari, and that relates to questions about the extent of independence of the Office of the Auditor General. We filed that case at the height of the disagreement between the Auditor General, the Audit Service Board, and the Auditor General over transfer of some staff that have been carried out by the Auditor General. And so that matter is also due to be heard today. And so those are the major issues relating to the Auditor General's office that is to be heard at the Supreme Court this morning.
Okay, so how many cases are being heard today again, Joseph?
And so there there are two of them relating to the Auditor General.
Okay. All right, Joseph. We will wait for you to fill us in. We know you do a fantastic job with giving us updates from the court. Trust Joseph Akable, our court correspondent, who bring us up to speed. We will give you the updates on News Desk later this morning. Joseph, thank you very much. Mr. Hussaini, I still have you with us. I just wanted to ask, because you're attributing this locking up to the executive, and I wonder, will the president know about this changing of law?
Well, the constitutional framework that we have put in place clearly identifies three arms of government. Three arms of government. The first arm of government is the legislature. The second arm of government is the executive. And the third arm of government is the judiciary. The Constitution makes it clear in Article 58 of the Constitution, that is the 1992 Constitution, that executive authority vests in the executive. Executive authority has been defined in the Constitution, in the interpretation section, to mean the power with which government acts. When you read Article 58 and 296 of the Constitution together, 296 or 295, the interpretation section of the Constitution together, you will come to one conclusion, that any action that is executive in nature, executory in nature, derives from the power of the president. And the president cannot pretend to know that actions are being taken in his name. And so this is a matter of public notice, public knowledge. People have gotten to know. The president, it was, who wrote to the Auditor General to proceed on accumulated leave. The president, it was, who was written to through his secretary, challenging the decision to direct the Auditor General to proceed on leave. The president responded by increasing the number of days of the Auditor General in the issue of his accumulated leave. And so the president cannot, by any stretch of imagination, say that he is unaware that there is boiling controversy as to whether or not the Auditor General can proceed on leave as directed by the president, or can a president direct the Auditor General, who is a creature of the Constitution, to proceed on leave. So the blame for all what is happening must be put squarely at the doorstep of the president.
Are these actions, finally, Mr. Hussaini, is this towards the office itself or towards the man who occupies the position? Hello, Mr. Hussaini?
Yes, somebody is trying to call in, but I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I was just asking if what is happening, in effect, is towards the office itself or the gentleman who occupies the position.
We don't have a gentleman occupying an office. The Constitution creates an office of the Auditor General. And so that is an office. And the Constitution insulates that office from any interference from any person or authority. And that is the integrity of that office that we are fighting to establish. Never mind that the president doesn't like the face of Domelevo, or a president might not like the face of anybody who occupies that office. Our argument is that that office is a creature of the Constitution, and the Constitution insulates that office from manipulation. Rightly so, because the fight against corruption and corrupt practices will be won if you have an independent Auditor General who will scrutinize the expenditure of the executive as approved by Parliament and hold them accountable for such expenditures. And we all know that the beginning of this problem is a challenge executive, the Auditor General. But that is what the fight against corruption, or the fight to prevent corruption or stop corruption entails. That people must be prepared to hold the executive arm of government accountable. Not only the executive arm of government, the legislative arm of government, the judicial arm of government, and all bodies that are created by the Constitution and that use public funds.
Okay, all right.
So for us, it is important, if we are passing right to information, we are passing laws like establishing institutions like special prosecutor. Yesterday, we spoke about the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. Many sunshine legislations are coming. They can only complement the anti-corruption institutions that are already in existence. And if we are taking action.
All right, Mr. Hussaini there, but I think you all...
That is soon in this... All
right. Mr. Hussaini, unfortunately, the network will not allow us to conclude, but I guess the point has well been made. We really appreciate your contribution. He's on the... he's actually the ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Well, on the back of this, we know that the CDD has spoken. The Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Center, Dr. Kojo Asante, says the action in terms of changing the locks to the Auditor General's office is appalling and ridiculous. We'll bring you the updates from courts later this morning. But let's move on to another matter.